Welcome to the science fiction fantasy epic known as the Celestial Accord. The galaxy is not empty. It is ancient. It is scarred. It is alive. For centuries, humanity believed itself the first to sail the stars. But beyond our reach, vast civilizations had already carved their destinies among the constellations. Together, they are bound in an uneasy alliance known as the Celestial Accord, a covenant as fragile as it is powerful. Its pillars are three mighty peoples, the Cognari, tall, slender, and robed in shades of sapphire. Their skin gleams like polished stone, their eyes burn with cold light. They are a species of logic incarnate, masters of thought and reason. To them, war is wasteful, chaos is poison, and knowledge is the only true weapon. The Aelori, angelic and radiant, clothed in white robes that whisper like wind through sacred halls. They dwell in harmony with the tree of life, a living monument whose branches reflect the very fate of the cosmos. The Aelori are seers, monks, and guardians of spirit, forever searching for meaning in the patterns of creation. The Dromi giants among mortals, mammalian colossi standing 9 feet tall. Their bodies are hunched with age and exile, yet their presence commands reverence. Merchants, wanderers, and refugees, they bear the grief of a homeworld torn from them in fire. Still, their pride endures stubborn, unyielding, eternal, and once there were the Dorin. Born of volcanic flame, their forms echoed the beasts of Earth's prehistory. Horned, plated, built for war, they were fury given flesh. A century ago, they rebelled, shattering the Dromi's world into ash and stone. The Accord exiled them to the dark edges of the galaxy, but the memory of their betrayal haunts every council and every world. Now into this hidden cosmos steps humanity. 5 young cadets, bound for a routine mission to a broken relay on a lonely asteroid, will be the first to see beyond the veil. Their failure will lead to revelation. Their survival will bind them to destiny. What begins as duty will become an odyssey. What begins as accident will become legend. And what begins with 5 voices may one day decide the chorus of the stars. This is not just science fiction. This is myth, reborn among the stars. This is the Celestial Accord. The Celestial Accord. Chapter 1. The Routine Mission. The shuttle bay of the Argent Dawn buzzed with the low hum of engines warming to life. The metallic air reeked faintly of ozone and oil, the scent of every launch pad in the Stellar Maintenance Corps. For most cadets, the moment before takeoff was tense, reverent. But for the 5 crammed into Shuttle 9, reverence was nowhere to be found. "Last chance to back out," said Jax Arden, leaning against the bulkhead with a smirk. His mop of dark hair looked like it hadn't seen a comb in weeks, but his eyes were sharp and restless, always looking for the next thrill. "We could just say the comms relay was really broken, shrug, and call it a day." "Or," replied Talia Vey, strapping herself into the pilot's chair with soldierly precision, "you could stop running your mouth and actually help with pre-flight checks, unless you like the idea of dying on your first mission." She was all discipline, blonde hair cropped short, posture straight as a blade. She had been raised in a family of officers, and it showed. From the back row, Mira Callan gave a dramatic sigh. "Gods, the 2 of you argue like an old married couple." She was the opposite of Talia, wild curls of red hair, bright mismatched socks under her uniform boots, and a grin that never seemed to fade. Mischief sparkled in her eyes. "If we crash, at least I'll die entertained." "You won't die at all," muttered Erin Solus, nose buried in a datapad, even as the shuttle shook beneath them. The quietest of the group, her obsidian, black hair framed pale, serious features. She was analytical, withdrawn, and rarely spoke, but when she did, it was always something precise. Statistically, 97% of maintenance flights encounter no serious hazard. Jax threw up his hands. And what about the other 3%? Oh, wait, let me guess. That's us. The fifth member, Kael Rennick, chuckled low in his throat. Taller than the others, broad-shouldered, his presence filled the cabin like gravity. If it is Jax, at least you'll have someone strong enough to drag your sorry hide out of the wreckage. His humour was dry, his voice calm, but there was warmth behind it, the kind of steadiness that made people trust him without realising it. See? That's why Kael's my favourite, Mira chimed, tossing a ration bar across the cabin. He caught it effortlessly. Strong, dependable, and actually eats the disgusting bricks they call food. Kael unwrapped the bar with slow patience. Fuel is fuel, spoken like a man who has never tasted sugar in his life, Mira teased. Talia rolled her eyes. Focus. Relay 7 is 3 hours out. We're there, we fix it, we come back. That's it. No distractions, no nonsense, no sugar debates. Sounds like a thrilling day, Jax muttered. Honestly, why do I always get stuck with the boring assignments? Because they knew you'd break something important if they sent you anywhere exciting, Erin said flatly, never looking up from her datapad. The cabin erupted with laughter. Mira, cackling loudest, Kael shaking his head with a faint grin, and even Talia cracking the ghost of a smile. For all their differences, the five fit together in ways none of them quite understood. They were rookies, still rough around the edges, but their bonds strained, teased, and tested were already being forged in the fires of youth and duty. As the engines roared to life and the shuttle lifted from the bay, the banter faded into silence. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and bright, waiting for them. The mission was routine, the danger unexpected, and the destiny awaiting them unimaginable. The Celestial Accord. Chapter 2. Countdown extended. 10 seconds to launch, the Bay AI intoned, calm as a lake at dawn. Up to that moment, Shuttle 9 had sounded like a cafe during lunch rush. Listen, Jax said, tapping the bulkhead with a knuckle. That's the song of a perfectly tuned engine begging to be admired. That's the song of a perfectly tuned engine asking you to stop touching it, Talia replied, not looking up from her checklist. Her hands moved with ritual grace. Toggle, verify, confirm. Arden. Status on environmental seals. Snug as a bug, Jax said, then frowned at the board. A very handsome, talented bug. Confirm with your mouth closed, Erin murmured, fingers stroking through a data stream as if soothing an animal. Long strands of black hair were braided tight against her scalp today. Functional, neat. Cabin OR at 21%. Nitrogen balance stable. Scrubbers nominal. Mira, hanging upside down from her harness like a lazy cat, peeled the wrapper off a ration bar with theatrical care. For luck, she said, breaking off a corner and tucking it into the little cloth pouch sewn inside her sleeve. One bite for the ship, one bite for the stars, one for the idiots flying with me. You just called yourself an idiot, Kael observed, tightening his shoulder straps. Even seated, he filled the space, quiet gravity in human form. Bold. Oh, I'm the best idiot, Mira said. Top tier. Gold medal. Ask anyone. Talia finished her checklist and finally turned. Blue eyes flint hard, mouth a firm line that softened only around people she trusted. All right, last call. If anyone needs to pee, cry, confess, undying love, or apologize to me personally, the window is closing. Jax lifted a hand. About the love. Denied, Talia said, deadpan. and the cabin snorted with suppressed laughter. The shuttle's lighting dipped to launch blue. The hum under their boots took on a tighter pitch, the way a bowstring sings when the archer draws full. "Strap check," Cale said. They reached across aisles, tugged each other's belts, a choreographed intimacy, born of training and near misses. Clicks, tugs, nods. Erin glanced up just once. "We're ready." Across the canopy, the Argent Dawn's bay doors irised open to a wafer of star-shot velvet. The void was a cathedral. Their breath fogged the inside of their helmets for half a second, then cleared as processors compensated. 5, 4, 3. The AI counted. Mira squeezed Jax's hand, quick as a heartbeat. He squeezed back. 2, 1. Talia's thumbs pressed home. The engines didn't roar so much as arrive, gravity turning on its side and pressing them deep into their seats. Vibrations formed a chord down their spines, ion bleed, manifold resonance, structural harmonics until, as always, the notes aligned and softened. The ship became a knife through silk. "Clear of bay," Talia said, voice steady. "Trajectory locked to relay 7. Burn at 80, 3%. Good job, 9. Jax whooped, a sound that broke and reformed into a laugh. Mira cheered with both hands over her head. Her harness kept her from somersaulting. Cale let out a long, satisfied breath. Even Erin's mouth quirked, the smallest uptick. Talia allowed herself a smile that reached her eyes. "Now that we didn't explode," Jax said, "I feel safe admitting I forgot my lucky socks." Mira gasped. "You cursed us." "It's a communications relay," Talia said. "We'll be in and out before the Argent finishes boiling the next batch of coffee." Cale tilted his head. "That's optimistic, pilot." "It's confidence," she returned. Erin's datapad chimed once. "Solar output fluctuation on the relay's panel array. Likely micrometeor scarring, possibly thermal shock. Nothing we can't handle." "See?" Talia said, like a closing argument. They drifted a while in companionable quiet, the shuttle's instrumentation whispering to itself. Stars crawled by. Their banter softened into a low tide, the kind that fills a space without demanding attention. "Remember when we trained in a sim with half the guidance offline?" Jax said. "You flew like a moth with a head injury," Mira said fondly. "He landed," Cale noted. "On the instructor's patience," Talia said. Erin made a non-committal sound, equal parts agreement and amusement. Her eyes remained on the scrolling data. If anyone noticed her hands were shaking just a little, they pretended not to. "Approach in 9 minutes," Talia announced at last. "Eyes up, helmets sealed. Let's earn our pay." "Cadets don't get paid," Jax said. "Then let's earn our continued existence." "Better." The shuttle adjusted attitude, nose canting toward a fingernail of stone and the thin lattice of the comms tower unfurling from it like a spire in a ruined city. The mission was routine. The air tasted of metal and cinnamon gum. The world, such as it was, felt simple. For a few minutes more. Chapter 3, Relay 7, Extended. Relay 7 grew from fingernail to blade to cliff face as they approached. The asteroid's surface pitted with age and impact. The tower rose out of the regolith, a skeletal finger of struts and panels, arrays like petals, only half open. One panel flickered, 2 were dead. A third had rotated at a crooked angle and frozen there, its servo arm locked in a final panicked gesture. "Gravity negligible," Erin said. "Mag clamps recommended. Watch for dust kick." "Copy," Talia said. "Cale, Mira cargo hatch. Jax, you're my spider. Erin, you're with me on diagnostics." "Oh, I wanted to be a spider," Mira said, already unclipping from her seat. "You can be a spider, next broken relay," Talia replied. They filed into the lock, helmets hissing, suits mapping pressure, with a soft massage of fabric. The outer hatch opened onto a world of silence. Their boots touched down. Mag clamps kissed metal with a satisfying clunk. When they moved, dust rose in shy curtains and hung there, reluctant to fall in the thinning whisper of microgravity. KL hauled the tool crate like it weighed nothing. Mira danced sideways, cable in one hand, anchoring herself to the relay base with a flick and catch that would have made a ship hand proud. Jax sprang upward, boots thudding as he scaled the tower struts with an athlete's joy. "Don't get cocky," Talia said, voice in his ear. "Me?" "Never," Jax said, absolutely cocky. Erin's voice stayed in their comms like a pulse. "Power down the secondary bus. Isolate panel cluster C, Jax. Decouple the gimbal on C3 and check the bearing. Mira, I need the fiber coupler replacement ready." "Already in my hand," Mira sang. "Kyle," Talia said, "stabilizers." "On it." Kale knelt, sunk anchor spikes, and locked them with a twist that engaged micro-sintering. The tower's faint wobble calmed. He looked up, faceplate reflecting 3 human shapes and a forest of metal. "Stable." "Beginning diagnostics," Erin said, fingers dancing across the portable console strapped to her forearm. Her voice went meditative, the way it always did when she fell in love with a problem. "Thermal variance is significant. Panel C. 2 is cold. Soaked. Servo seized. C. 3 over-rotated under asymmetric load. C. 1 power diode R. That's ugly." "How ugly?" Jax asked, hanging upside down from a crossbar like a child on playground bars. "Ugly enough to use the phrase catastrophic if mishandled. Do not jostle C1. Jax froze. "I wasn't going to." "You were absolutely going to," Mira said. She pressed the fresh fiber coupler into his waiting hand with exaggerated care. "See? Responsible, helpful, astonishingly good-looking." Talia worked in tandem with Erin, voice and hands steady. "Primary trunk is clean. Secondary bus is compromised, but salvageable. Whoever spec'd these runs was cheap." "Cheaper than your sense of humour," Jax said. "That was uncalled for," Mira said, mock offended. "Talia has a gorgeous sense of humour. You just have to look for it with a microscope." Kale checked the stabilizers again, because Kale always checked things twice. "Anchors holding. If we spin, it won't be from the base." They fell into the rhythm of work. It was simple, honest, and good. Loosen, inspect, replace, cut, splice, resolder. Argue about the best angle to approach a stuck bolt. Concede, laugh, continue. The relay responded. Lights along its spine, flickering toward life. "Primary link is clean," Erin said. "I'm seeing handshake from node 17. That's promising." "Anything on cores?" Talia asked. "Meteor scarring. Stress microfractures. There's also a signature I don't recognize. Faint. Might be background noise." "Or?" Jax prodded. "Or something else," Erin said. She didn't like to speculate. She liked to know. "All right," Talia said. "Final checks. Jax, reseat C3. Mira, tie down that cable run. Kale, once Jax is clear, give me a load test on the tower." "With pleasure," Kale said. Jax reached for the last latch on C3's panel. The hinge complained. Stuck. Stubborn. He grunted, shifted his weight, and... "Careful," Erin said. "Remember C-uns." "I'm on C3, Jax said. "I'm not touching C1. I'm not even thinking about..." His glove brushed something small and sharp beside the hinge. Not part of the original assembly. Not a meteor scar. A foreign lip of metal fused into the seam, almost invisible. "What is that?" he started to say. He never finished. Chapter 4. The Shattering. Extended. The detonation was not cinematic. It was ugly. It was soundless in the vacuum, and yet it was everything. Light convulsing through panel seams, a flower of hot shrapnel, the tower arching in a sickening flex. The blast wave hit all five. Jax felt his world spin and edge and stop. His visor starred with cracks, thin as frost. He tried to breathe and the suit compensated, rattling his chest with emergency air. He was upside down. Or the asteroid was. It hardly mattered. Mira caromed off a support strut and tumbled, limbs, pinwheeling, a scream tearing from her throat. Chapter 5. The Unveiling. Extended. He was tall enough to seem made for different gravity, thin in the way of a blade rather than a branch. His skin held a depth of blue that wasn't a colour so much as a temperature, veins luminous beneath like traceries of thought. Cloth that might have been cloth settled around him in measured waves. It whispered without touching the windless air. His face was precise, not severe. His eyes were patient. Every motion was economical. Every choice was deliberate. The figure crossed the rock in long, even strides, slowed only to assess the field with a single glance that travelled from the wounded relay to the anchors Kale had set, to Erin's failing suit, to the four bodies ringed around her. He knelt with a grace that did not waste even the idea of energy. Cognari, Mira breathed, as if saying it aloud might make the idea less impossible. The being's gaze flickered once in her direction, noted, filed. He extended a hand. Light obeyed. It spilled from an unfurling bracer at his wrist, resolving into a diagon of white glyphs that crawled, rotated, nested. A tool the size and shape of a musician's instrument, extruded from nothing, all gleam and soft hum. He set it against Erin's side, just above the patch where blood still flowered behind her visor. "Do not move," he said. His voice was the opposite of a shout. It filled the channel without volume. A bell struck miles below the city, whose tone thrummed in the bones of buildings. An accent threaded the standard. He spoke precise where theirs was sloppy, measured where theirs skipped. "She has suffered penetration trauma, with secondary lung collapse and hemorrhage. Your patches are functional, but insufficient." "Can you?" Jax started, then swallowed the rest of the question, because the answer was already happening. Light passed through Erin's suit, spill clean and cold. The Cognari's instrument, no, not an instrument, something engineered and elegant beyond naming, sent a wash of motes into her, mapping damage in a pointerless storm. The readout on his bracer filled with symbols. His free hand made a tiny adjustment in air, like a conductor cueing a single violin. Erin felt pressure without pain, a fullness in her chest, as if some external rhythm insisted her lungs remember how to work. The seal tightened from the inside. Fluid retreated. The urgency of everything turned down by degrees. "Pulse improving," Kale said, because in the midst of miracles he clung to numbers. "Blood oxygenation rising," Talia added, disbelieving her own instruments. Mira laughed on a gasp, tears floating off her lashes to bead inside her helmet like tiny planets. Jax made a sound that might have been a sob. He pretended it wasn't. Nobody contradicted him. The Cognari moved the device by a hair's breadth, and something woven and liquid slithered through the breach, blooming into a meshed lattice that sealed vein and tissue. He held it there not long, and then not at all. Erin's chest rose again, steady. Her eyes fluttered. Focus returned. It found the blue face above her and widened. "Hi," Mira said, voice shaky and huge in their shared channel. We're very normal. Totally normal day. Thanks for saving her." The Cognari's gaze drifted up from his work at last, and settled on each of them in turn. Not measuring, not judging, calibrating. My designation is Ethis, he said. Cognari Directorate, Civilian Medical Caste. He inclined his head a fraction. We were observing. The device you attempted to repair has been altered. Altered? Talia echoed, adrenaline flaring into anger and fear. By who? Unknown, Ithis said, without apology for the limits of his knowledge. But not by you. Jax, still gripping Erin's shoulder, found his voice. Why were you observing? Ithis regarded him, and if there was humour in the tilt of his head, it was too ephemeral to be offence. Because intervention is forbidden under our own protocols, unless loss of life is imminent. He looked down to Erin again. Now that intervention has occurred, we must complete it correctly. What does that mean? Cale asked. It means this one will live if transported to a Cognari medical facility within the next cycle. Field stabilization is insufficient for full recovery. There is internal damage your sutures cannot mend and your pharmacopoeia cannot address. We will take her. Mira bristled, not at him, but at the nakedness of the truth. Take her where? To my world, Ithis said simply, as if he were saying to a room down the hall. We are not far. It will be safer for her than attempting to return to your ship and then to whatever care you trust among your kind. Talia squared herself in the low gravity, leader by posture, if not by rank. She had been trained for power differentials. None of that training included this. She's our crew. We go with her. A flicker across Ithis's features, consideration, recalculation. That is acceptable, he said. Emergency exception permits the conveyance of immediate relations. We're not, Jack started, then stopped. He looked at Erin, who had once pretended not to notice he kept an extra coffee for her after late watch. We're immediate enough. Erin tried to speak. Talia touched her helmet with 2 fingers. Save it, she murmured. Breathe. Ithis rose in one smooth motion that made human joints seem noisy by comparison. We must depart. The explosive device you triggered was embedded in the relay, not affixed. The structure may not be stable. This site may see secondary detonation. Mira blanched. You're saying someone booby trapped a comms tower in the middle of nowhere? Yes, Ithis said. Why? Cale asked, almost to himself. The more pertinent question is who, Talia said, and found that she hated the number of possible answers, because until 5 minutes ago she would have said none. Jax looked at the tower, then the ship, then the blue-skinned surgeon who had made miracles seem like common sense. What is this? He asked, voice low. Who are you to us? Ithis's eyes held galaxies and equations, and a patient sorrow that did not belong to a single lifetime. We are your neighbours, he said. You have not learned the map of the street yet. He gestured with a small, precise motion that was both invitation and command. Bring her, quickly. Cale lifted Erin as if she were made of spun sugar and consequence. She winced, then relaxed against him. Talia grabbed the triage kit. Mira slung the tool crate, even though they didn't need it, because humans save strange things when the world ends. Jax took point, because of course he did. They followed the Cognari up the ramp into the light. Behind them, the relay tower creaked. A panel fell with the gentlest of sounds and drifted, slow as a sigh. Inside, the air tasted like clean metal and something else sharp and cool, like the breath you take in a winter forest. The corridor flowed forward in curves that felt inevitable. Pale glyphs tracked along the walls and then swam into their helmets in translation they hadn't asked for. Is this... Mira began, then stopped, because astonishment took too many words and none of them fit. Your ship? It is a vessel, Ithis said, as if any label beyond function were unnecessary. Why uncloak now? Talia asked. Ithis glanced over his shoulder. Because you saw us, he said, and because she asked us to. They looked to Erin. She blinked, dazed. Did I... You reached, Ithis said, a shade warmer. You did not know the word for help that we hear, but you thought it very loudly. Mira let out a tremulous laugh. Erin, you beautiful introvert, you screamed telepathically. Erin managed the smallest ghost of a smile. They entered a chamber that was not quite a room, more like the idea of one. Surfaces unfolded into couches that matched their shapes. Light arranged itself into gentle gradients. A halo of instruments blossomed above a plinth, already calibrating to Erin's vitals through a membrane that had flowed across her torso like a second skin. Ithis adjusted one setting, then stepped back. She will stabilize. We will depart. When we arrive, you will have questions. Someone will have answers. The slightest pause. Not all of them. Talia opened her mouth, half protest, half plea, and closed it again. She looked at her people. Jax, wild-eyed, already craning to take in every corner. Mira, shaking, grinning through tears. KL, steady, holding a hand on Erin's forearm, because he could, because human touch mattered, even when beyond it lay miracles. Let's go, Talia said. Outside, the stars waited, close as breath and far as myth, and somewhere in the spaces between their light, 100 worlds had already learned to say neighbour and enemy and home in languages humanity did not yet know. The ship turned without seeming to move. The ramp sealed, the veil of stealth folded back over them like night pulling a blanket. And Shuttle 9, 5 cadets, and a woman between this world and the next, left the asteroid and the idea of a small, simple galaxy behind. The Celestial Accord, Chapter 6. The Stars Speak. The Cognari vessel glided through the void as if the laws of inertia no longer applied. Human ships shuddered, hummed, vibrated with every burn of their drives. This one moved like a thought made manifest. It did not travel so much as decide to be elsewhere. The 5 cadets sat scattered through the chamber, unable to mask their awe. Jax tried to act unimpressed, arms folded, but his eyes darted across every glowing glyph. Mira sat cross-legged on the deck, bouncing nervously, unable to contain her questions. Talia kept her stance rigid near the viewport, as if posture could hold her world together. KL remained close to Erin, whose pale face was still framed by alien instruments, her chest rising steady under the care of technology no human mind could yet understand. At last, there